Welcome, everyone, to the Over Under Movies podcast, the show where we take a prominent figure or franchise in the world of filmmaking and ask the simple question, are they overrated or are they underrated? My name is Dylan D'Angelis. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host. He is the Venom to my Eddie Brock.
Eddie.
This one's really easy. Mr. Jason Gong.
Hello. Welcome to the podcast.
Venom, you can't be eating people's heads, Venom.
And that's the entirety of the franchise. Yeah. That's the only joke they have.
Good rundown. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you guys next week. Today we are talking about the Venom trilogy of movies. We'll maybe get into some of the other Sony Spider-Man films also. A weird type of movies to talk about for this podcast, honestly. So, superhero films. There has always been two main juggernauts going head to head in the comic space, in the TV space, and the movie space, and that is Marvel and their now Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has been ultra successful ever since 2008 when they kind of started the whole thing with the first Iron Man film. And then we have the DC Universe, which crashed and burned.
Yep.
With our friend Zack Snyder. Check out our Snyderverse episode that we did last year.
One of our very first episodes.
And now they're currently rebooting the DCU with James Gunn.
Check out our James Gunn episode.
Also did James Gunn episode.
That is our very first episode.
And for some reason, there's a third superhero cinematic universe that is out in the wild. And according to Wikipedia, the title is Sony's Spider-Man Universe. Now, Jason, that title is a bit of a misnomer.
Right.
Because Spider-Man is not in these movies.
He does not exist in this universe. Or he does as of Madame Web. But he's not in these movies.
So for this episode, we're specifically talking about the three Venom films mostly, though we'll glance a little bit at the other films that have been made. So far, there have been 5 movies released. We're recording this before Kraven the Hunter in December, so that'll be number 6. But starting in 2018, there was the first Venom movie, and then they did a second Venom movie, which is a COVID film that came out in 2021, and then they had Morbius.
They sure did.
Which is a meme starring Jared Leto that fans were able to trick Sony into putting it back in the theater.
That was great. That's got to be like top 10 movie moments of all time.
And then this year we had Madame Web starring Dakota Johnson and a bunch of other pretty ladies.
Underrated.
That came out earlier this year. And then right now in theaters, as we're recording this, is Venom: The Last Dance, which is the culmination of the Venom trilogy. And I don't know, man. The existence of these movies in general is kind of baffling to me. I mean, you're the Spider-Man guy between the two of us.
I love Spider-Man.
What are your thoughts on these films, like, overall?
Venom's cool. I like Venom. He was a character that was kind of oversaturated in the 80s. When he was released, he was mega popular. Back then, you could just make a dark version of your hero, and then boom, instant classic character. And that's what happened with Venom. You can't see it on our poster here, but Dylan, right behind you, you've got your superheroes hanging out on a steel beam poster. Yeah. Venom made the cut, and he's not as big as those other characters. Venom was like really a big character in the 80s and 90s. Todd McFarlane was like a famous artist who did some of his poses. And then, yeah, he just blew up afterwards. He was in Spider-Man 3. So they've been trying to get a Venom movie off the ground, like a Venom solo movie off the ground since like the 90s. And then they put him in Spider-Man 3, and then I'm sure there was spin-off plans either for that or for the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans to have a Venom movie. Eventually, they just kind of did it. Sony had reached this agreement with Marvel to let Marvel put Spider-Man in the MCU, and then Sony did this tenuous thing where they were releasing Spider-Man-adjacent movies without Spider-Man and without ever clarifying whether or not these movies took place in the MCU. They don't.
Which is now confirmed because the little crossover that these films have with the MCU is that Tom Hardy's Eddie Brock character, he gets yanked into the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Right.
And he only exists in like a post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Basically.
So in the post-credit scene for Venom: Let There Be Carnage, he gets yanked into the MCU. And in the post-credit scene of Spider-Man No Way Home, he gets yanked back into the Venomverse. Or, I'm sorry, Sony's Spider-Man universe. So yeah, so my overall thoughts on these movies is not what I expected. When I think of Venom and how I would have adapted him, I would have made it so nu metal. I would have had so much Linkin Park in these movies, so much 3 Days Grace, having
a lot of Corn,
yeah,
a lot of Limp Bizkit.
he transforms and you listen to Animal I Have Become. That's what I pictured. Do you know the scene in Daredevil where they're like in the rain and then that Evanescence song comes on?
Yeah, well, that's during the montage of Elektra like training.
Yeah, they're like suiting up and it's like, wake me up inside.
I'm familiar with the song.
That's what I thought Venom was going to be. And that's what I wanted. And they gave me something completely different. Dylan, how would you describe these movies?
They're really strange because I think they're movies that don't seem to fully have a tone figured out what they want to do exactly. Obviously, Venom is a very violent character, very dark character, and obviously that is a direction that you could go in this, right? You can make I don't know the ratings off the top of my head.
They're all PG-13.
They're all PG-13. So you could make these rated R. You can make them rated R, and you can make them super violent. I mean, Venom's literally eating people's heads in these movies. So you can make it super bloody. Actually, the third one's pretty bloody. They're probably walking the line of that PG-13 rating. You could go in that direction, and you can go in the direction that Spider-Man 3 was trying to go with the symbiote, that it kind of like brings out the darkest elements of your persona, and it makes you like depressed, and it makes you angry, and it turns you into somebody that you're not. Instead, these movies become like a buddy cop movie between Eddie Brock and Venom. Yeah. And Venom is like a goofball that's just like hanging out with Eddie all the time.
Yeah, it posits that Eddie and Venom are both just two losers who find each other and then become friends. And they're both like really altruistic men, and they just want the world to be a better place and to be left alone, which I like. But yeah, like typically in Venom lore, you know, these guys are angry, they're evil. They start off as a supervillain, and this movie just doesn't go that direction at all. They just make them these two lovable losers, and it's kind of fun. It kind of works. I don't know. We'll talk about our feelings on the movies, but it's just a direction that I think was like a bold choice. Whether or not it was like ultimately a good choice, that's up for debate. People like these movies.
People definitely like these movies, and that's why the overrated, underrated conversation here is going to be a little difficult, because they don't have good critic scores. They have okay audience scores, and the box office numbers are absurd. And so they're kind of like Transformers movies in that regard. Mm-hmm. When I was watching Venom: The Last Dance, I was like, oh, this is just a Transformers movie.
This one felt the most like a Transformers movie. The military is like very prominent in it. It's about some aliens that want to protect the world from other aliens. It's so Transformers-y.
And so, yeah, the first Venom film came out in 2018. It is directed by Ruben Fleischer, who is the guy that did the Zombieland movies. So he has more of like a comedic background. And then, yeah, all these movies, they start Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, who is some sort of like anti-capitalist reporter that he's trying to get to the scoop. He has like ultra instinct journalistic integrity, and he has his girlfriend played by Michelle Williams, who is too good to be in these movies.
It's so funny.
I hope she's in these. She bought a very nice house with the money she made from these two movies she was in.
I'm sure she did.
And then in the first one, Riz Ahmed plays Elon Musk, and he is ostensibly the bad guy of the film. Though the real bad guy is Riot. Riot is the symbiote. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, is that I know that in the comics, all these symbiotes have names, right?
They all have names.
They all have names, they have personalities, and they have unique powers.
Yes.
And that's not really fleshed out ever until the last 20 minutes of the third movie.
Right.
And so the first one, it's just Venom fighting Riot, and it's just a mess. And it's dark, and you're like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, the first one I think is fine. It's just like a fine superhero movie with a really thin villain who just gets powers out of nowhere, and the power set is exactly the same as Venom's. It's fine. The real like star of all of these movies is that buddy comedy between Eddie and Venom, and sometimes that comedy is really annoying.
Your enjoyment of these movies completely hinges on whether or not you like Tom Hardy's performance or not, or do you find it like really, really annoying, because that's the scale.
Yeah.
And he kind of, he goes back and forth.
Yeah, he walks the line for sure. It's, if anything, I'll say it is a display of his range. If you watch Mad Max Fury Road and then you watch any of these Venom movies, you're like, wow, this guy, he can do it all, but should he?
Yeah, because these three movies, even though they have different directors, the screenwriter is the same for all of them. Kelly Marcel. She's uncredited for the script,
Script
doctoring for Mad Max Fury Road. So she worked on a Tom Hardy movie before. And I think she also has a screenwriting credit for Bronson, which is an older Tom Hardy movie.
Well, they're friends. They met in like the late 2000s in like a London acting class. I think he was teaching it, and she went to that theater. So they've been hooking each other up with jobs for a long time now.
So even though, it's different directors, the second one's directed by Andy Serkis for some reason. So Andy Serkis, he comes back, he plays the mocap for Null in the third one for some reason. It's not important. It's not showing off Andy Serkis's
They could have gotten any
performance.
We could have played Null.
It could have been an AI character for all we care.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be.
And then Kelly Marcel directs the third one.
Good for her.
They actually let her direct.
I do think that's kind of cool.
The trilogy. And I would say the third one's the best one. Unfortunately, you need to watch the first two movies to get to that point. Unfortunately. And there's plot points that are kind of important for you to understand the third one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the third one's the one that's reviewing lowest right now. I could be wrong.
It has a 39% last time I checked.
Yeah, and then let me just pull up for Rotten Tomatoes for the first one. Usually we do this later. Oh, the first one has a 30, so that's bad. The second one
has better reviews, which is interesting because I think the second one is really a mess.
Yeah, the second one's got a 57.
The second one's also really short. It's called Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and the antagonist of the film is Carnage, who it's completely hand-waved how Carnage is even created in the movie.
No, it's not. He eats Eddie's blood and then he becomes Carnage.
Yeah, the serial killer Cletus Cassidy, who is Carnage in the comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
He bites Eddie, and the symbiote blood that he bites
gets in his body,
turns into an entire separate symbiote called Carnage.
That's how it works. The symbiotes reproduce asexually, so they just spawn new symbiotes once in a while.
Yeah, the symbiote's power is so variable through the course of these films.
Oh, yeah.
They go from being oh my God, they're just, they can just reproduce, and they can expand, and they can do all these cool things. And then in the third one, those xenophages show up, and
they just eat.
They just suck.
Yeah.
The symbiotes are
right.
They turn to putty people.
So we see 5 or 6 new symbiotes show up in the last third of the last movie. This is a spoilers review, by the way.
Spoilers for a third for anybody that wants to go see it in theaters.
But none
of these spoilers are going to affect your enjoyment of the film whatsoever.
All of those named symbiotes do show up. They're not named in the movie, but they're named in the credits. And they protect Venom, and then they all just get eaten and die. And yeah, to Dylan's point, there's a trope called conservation of ninjutsu, which says that if one ninja shows up on screen, he's going to be badass and he's going to kill a bunch of people. But if 100 ninjas show up, then they're just fodder for the hero to defeat. And that is what happens to these symbiotes. The more that show up in the same place, the weaker they become.
But correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the Venom comic all about the symbiotes?
Sometimes. I mean, there's been a few runs of the comic. There's a good run where he's just kind of fighting some military guys that are trying to capture him. But yeah, the symbiotes show up a lot in the Venom comics.
Because the third movie really starts to branch out into this, the symbiotes are a whole thing.
They have their own planet. They have a god that they used to worship and then they overthrew. All of that is from recent runs of comic books, I would say, the 2010s.
Like Null, that's a more recent character in the comics?
Yeah. And if you watched, did you see Thor Love and Thunder?
Yeah, unfortunately.
So the bad guy in that, Gore, he gets the God Killer's sword. And the God Killer, he gets Null's sword, basically, I think. But they don't call it that in Thor because they didn't have the rights to that. But in the comics, one of the gods that Gore interfaces with is Null, and he gets his weapon. And that's, yeah.
So who's more powerful in the Spider-Verse, Madam Web or Null?
Well,
I'm guessing they haven't crossed paths.
Madam Web's web connects them all. So, did you see that Twitter leak that was Sony is moving forward with its Sinister Six movie? It's going to feature Kraven,
Venom,
Morbius, Vulture, and Madam Web fighting Null.
And me, I'm the sixth.
Yeah.
Breaking news here on the pod.
It's nonsense, dude, because that's never been a lineup of the Sinister Six. Madam Web has not ever been part of the Sinister Six because she's a good guy. They don't fight Null. Yet,
why do movie studios have to make things so fucking difficult?
I don't know.
That's really the major question you like get out of watching these movies. It's like, why can't they just have Spider-Man? People want to see fucking Spider-Man on screen. The one thing that they've, I don't know, like tactfully kind of done here is they haven't really shown who the Spider-Man is in this universe. It's not Tom Holland. We know that. I guess it could technically be Tom Holland.
Could be Tom Holland.
Because we saw in the Doctor Strange movie that like 90% of other universes, it's just Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange.
That's true.
So this universe, it could also be Tom Holland. It could be a different Tom Holland. Or it could be Tobey Maguire, or it could be Andrew Garfield, or it could be
their own guy.
It could be Miles Morales. It could be like all sorts of different Spider people.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. They don't seem to have plans to bring Spider-Man in just yet. Peter Parker is canonically born in the year 2003 in the Madam Web movie. They still haven't decided whether or not Madam Web is fully connected to these Venom movies. All we know is
That's right. Doesn't Adam Scott play Parker?
Ben Parker, yeah.
So he's Uncle Ben.
He's Uncle Ben.
What year does Madam Web take place in?
2003.
Oh, so it takes place the year.
Yeah, because in Madam Web, the song Toxic by Britney Spears plays on the radio, and the DJ's like, everyone keep an eye on this track. It's going to be a huge hit. Wow. He's right.
Oh, they knew.
That's how you know it's 2003, because Toxic is playing on the radio.
Oh my God. Did you see that Netflix movie that is around
that's
right
just
now?
About the year 2003 or whatever, or 2006.
People on Twitter are like micro-analyzing the outfits that people are wearing at a high school in 2003, saying that they're basically saying they're not ugly enough.
Yeah.
They're like, these people are wearing clothes that fit them, and the girls are wearing like crop tops and like relatively form-fitting clothing.
No, the people on Twitter are right. I remember.
People in the 2000s, I mean, we were in high school in the late 2000s, but yeah, nobody had any sort of fashion sense whatsoever.
Yeah, it was
atrocious.
Mess. Yeah, and so that movie, I don't even know what it's called, but
I think it's like a horror movie of sorts where they're like time traveling. I don't know.
I know there's time traveling, or I think there's time traveling.
They time traveled, and there's somebody rolling around on Heelys, and they're like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah,
I'm in 2003.
That part's accurate. I do remember the Heelys in 2003.
I should note, Heelys were also stupid in the 2000s. We were well aware.
No, I still want a pair, but I'm afraid I would hurt myself.
Yeah, the Heelys are something that's fun when you're not the one responsible for your health insurance.
Yeah, that's so true. I do have health insurance now. I gotta find my card. If you guys know where I put my insurance card, please leave a comment.
Get your health insurance card, then you get Heelys, not in the other way around.
Yeah, so what are we talking about? Venom.
It also, it has the Eminem song. The Eminem song is the best part of the first movie.
And it's the credits.
Just skip to the credits.
Yeah, the second one has another song called Venom, and it's by Little Sims, who is a prolific Black British rapper who, she's just in the club rapping about Venom, and it's good. I really like Little Sims.
You saying she should go back to the club?
Yeah, go back to the club. One of the top reviews I saw for Venom 3 just says, "In the club, we all Venom."
Well, so true. So the first one, so do you think the first one or the second one's better?
Marginally the first one.
Because it's an origin story and it gets that.
Yeah, they just get that little boost of the templates laid out for them, and it's hard to mess it up.
Even though a major issue that I noticed like almost immediately from the first movie is that Eddie Brock doesn't have a great like cast of supporting characters around him, and as the series goes on, it's basically just him and Venom alone, and that really narrows what you're able to do with the movies. And I think that's what kind of like makes it like the Transformers films a bit, where you're stuck having to be like, all right, this is our main character, and then we need to like build a plot around them with a MacGuffin that is constantly recentering that character on the plot.
Yeah. So like the first one, he has his ex-fiance played by Michelle Williams. And I think she's a good character. I think her new boyfriend is a good character.
Shout out to Dan.
But the only character that's consistent throughout all three of these movies is Mrs. Chen, who is a like bodega store owner that Eddie likes and protects. And she's just like this middle-aged or old Chinese lady, and she just shows up randomly in these movies.
And she temporarily gets the Venom symbiote in the second movie.
Yes. Oh, and she's also in Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, so she's all over the place in these movies.
She's kind of the Sony Spider-Man universe's main character as of right now. She's been in the most films.
She's like the Stan Lee
Yeah.
of these movies. I think Stan Lee has a cameo in the first Venom, right?
Yeah, he does.
That's unfortunate. R.I.P.
Have you ever seen, because that would have been one of his last cameos, but his other one from 2018 was in Teen Titans Go to the Movies. Have you seen this cameo in that?
No.
He shows up on the Warner Brothers lot and he's like, I love doing cameos. I don't care what studio it's for. I love cameos.
I need money.
Yeah.
So did you watch Morbius and Madam Web this week also?
I watched Madam Web. I think Madam Web is such a fun movie. I've put on Morbius and then turned it off.
I should know. Madam Web and Morbius, much like easier, I would say, to do like an overrated, underrated argument for, because they're just like bad across the board.
Well, they've gotten trashed. Madam Web, I think, just came out at a time where people wanted to go see a movie and they saw one and were disappointed and they were like, this is the worst thing ever. Madam Web is better than some of these Venom movies.
Madam Web also had one of the worst trailers in a long time that just immediately got memed.
Yeah.
And I think people were just out at that point.
Yeah. Too bad for her. I'm here for Madam Web.
Yeah, I mean, the secondary cast is pretty good, like all of those younger actresses that are in the movie.
Yeah, they're talented. They're up and comers.
And it's kind of it's crazy that they were like, we're just gonna waste this.
Well, we'll see. If Madam Web is in Sinister Six, maybe we'll see those Spider-Women as well.
Yeah. So the next movie in this franchise is Kraven the Hunter, starring Aaron Taylor Johnson,
Jesus Christ.
who is currently dead in the MCU, so
He's not beholden to anything there.
he doesn't have to do MCU movies. Hopefully he's making a lot of money for being Kraven the Hunter. That's coming out in December, and then here's all the other films that are currently in development.
Yeah, let's see how many of these actually happen.
Let's gear up. The Sinister Six, which apparently Sony's plans for this date back all the way to 2013 after The Amazing Spider-Man. And obviously, if you've seen the Amazing Spider-Man films, it's clearly setting up like Rhino and Lizard and Electro. Like, there's a Sinister Six framework in those movies that is better than whatever the hell they're currently trying to do. There's a movie called Night Watch. What the hell is Night Watch?
Good question. What's it say?
Sony was actively developing a film based on the character Night Watch with a script.
What the hell is Night Watch? What is happening? Night Watch. He first appeared in Web of Spider-Man number 97. Who is this man?
Okay, another one is Jackpot. Have you heard of Jackpot?
I think MJ just used that as a superhero name for a while. What's it say?
It says Mark Guggenheim, a writer on the Jackpot comics, was revealed to be writing a screenplay in May 2020 and said that he had been working on the script for 2 years at that point.
Okay, Mary Jane became the third Jackpot in 2023. So there was 2 Jackpots before her. That maybe it's similar to Madam Web, where they're going to introduce all 3 of the Jackpots at once.
Yeah. So those are the ones that are kind of specific. Now we get into Untitled Roberto Orci Project, announced in March 2020. The plot will be based on a property from a different corner of the Marvel Universe that Sony has access to. Hopefully we never see that.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Another one is Untitled Olivia Wilde Project.
What is happening?
Announced in August 2020. The project has been a high priority, apparently, for the studio since 2020. It was believed to be a Spider-Woman movie.
Oh, that makes sense. She would be a good Spider-Woman.
There was this one I'm aware of, El Muerto, which was supposed to be starring Bad Bunny, which I know this film is now canceled because I think like Bad Bunny like dropped out of the project and they just decided to not do it anymore. I'm assuming El Muerto was another one of those like D-list Spider-Verse characters that they're like, hey, we got rights to them. Let's get a famous person. Let's do it. Untitled Hypno Hustler film. What the hell's the Hypno Hustler? These are fake names.
This is so funny.
This is like some kind of Mystery Men when they're doing the auditions for the superhero. This film centered on the character Hypno Hustler with Donald Glover set to star and produce.
This is crazy.
Oh, man. Maybe you're in now because it's Donald Glover.
Yeah, I would watch anything with Donald Glover.
Obviously, he played the Prowler in Spider-Man Homecoming. Well, whatever his name is, Aaron Davis? Right?
Yeah, and then he plays the Prowler proper in Across the Spider-Verse.
That's true. In December 2018, the spin-off film from the MCU Spider-Man films, or the animated film starring Spider-Man's Aunt May, was suggested, a notion Sony previously referred to as silly. So we could have had the Aunt May cinematic universe.
So Marvel published this comic in, I think, the early 2000s. I think it was called Trouble, which was, it was billed as the secret origin of Spider-Man. and it was marketed towards like young female readers, and it was a drama about Ben Parker and May, and then Richard Parker and Mary, Spider-Man's parents, and it was about how I think how Richard had an affair with May, and then May was Spider-Man's real mom, and then he got adopted. So it was like just like a dumb love story with a wild
a
affair.
love quadrilateral.
Right, exactly. And then that was marketed as canon for a little while until they had to walk it back. But once in a while, it comes up as like a joke that they're finally adapting Trouble to screen. And when Emma Roberts got cast as Mary Parker in Madam Web, and Uncle Ben was being played by Adam Scott, people were like, oh my God, they're really doing it.
They're doing it.
They got like hot, attractive actors to play these characters, and there's only one reason that could be.
That's absolutely my favorite part of all the Spider-Man films is how Aunt May has gone from being a crusty old lady in the Sam Raimi films to be getting progressively younger every single film she's portrayed in.
Right. That is weird. Anyway, what are we talking about?
The next Spider-Man film is going to be like a 20-year-old Aunt May. She's like Benjamin Button. She's aging in reverse. Anyway, I guess we could do 5 minutes here on Venom: The Last Dance.
Yeah, the movie just came out.
I literally just saw it in theaters. We're recording this like after I got out of theaters. I gotta say, it's definitely the best movie in the franchise.
I agree.
And I think that's like only because it's more of an action movie than the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is like a level of turn your brain off in the movie. It's still not good. And there are some like pretty like baffling choices made in the direction that the story goes in. The final battle takes place in Area 51, which I believe is exactly what happens in Independence Day Resurgence. Love that. Love movies that randomly go to Area 51. There is a hippie family that's driving around in a Volkswagen van.
I spent a lot of time on that hippie family.
They're like the third most important character in the film.
They cut back to that family constantly.
And you really don't give a shit. It's like, get these people the fuck out of the movie.
I liked them. They were cute.
The end of the movie redeems the film a lot, though, when it just introduces a bunch of symbiotes that, spoilers, they get killed off in 10 minutes. But in the 10 minutes they're on screen, it's kind of cool.
They're cool. I think they look distinct enough. I mean, all they do is they have different colors, so you can tell them apart.
Well, no, some of them have like legit powers, though.
Yeah, they have unique power sets, which I think is great. You get to see cool symbiote action that maybe you've been wanting from the rest of the series. I feel like, what's his name, Riot from the first movie? Not that cool. Carnage, I thought, was a pretty cool symbiote. He did some neat things.
Like what like Riot and Carnage, like their powers are just the same as Venom's, right? They're just strong.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, technically, Riot in that first movie could turn his arms into blades, which Venom doesn't really do, but it wasn't distinct enough. These symbiotes, they were like, one guy was like, had hammer fists. One of them was super fast. The one used her tentacles in like a cool way. She kind of like Doc-Ocked around. Just good symbiotes.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any of their names or what their comic backstories are, but you watch that portion of the third movie and you kind of think, what if they had established this from the very first movie, that there is a collection of symbiotes and Venom's kind of like the leader of them, you might have something there. Because then you have a team, right? You have people that Venom can talk to. That's not Eddie. That's not Tom Hardy talking to himself.
Yeah.
I think Tom Hardy does the voice of Venom also.
He does.
So it's literally Tom Hardy talking to himself. And it's like grating eventually. You're like, shut the fuck up.
I know. Venom is like your most annoying friend. It would be crazy to have him in your head all day yapping. I like these characters and their relationship, but like, I wouldn't want to hang out with them.
Yeah, it's a little too much. And I think the character that suffers the most is Eddie, because you don't really get to see who that character is ever after the first like 30 minutes of the first movie.
Right, because in the first movie, he's like a hyper competent and journalist, and that, like you said, has a lot of integrity. And then after that, it's just, oh, I'm wacky because
he's
Venom's
like spiraling out of control.
Yeah, constantly. And sometimes Venom takes over. And I do want to say that, like, sometimes they'll do a joke for so long that it becomes really annoying, and then they'll keep going and it becomes funny again. So like in this one, the latest one, when he's at the casino and Venom takes over his body at the slot machine and he just keeps doing the slots and then going like this. Sorry, I know this is an audio format, but what I'm doing is miming Eddie Brock at the slot machine, pulling it and then hitting the slot buttons constantly. He does it for like 5 minutes straight, and it's a little funny at first, and then it's not funny at all, and then it's hilarious. And I think the movie really banks on that style of humor.
Yeah, then he kicks the slot machine, and then everybody looks at him.
Yeah, and then Mrs. Chen shows up for no reason.
Yeah, because we have to.
And then they dance to Dancing Queen by ABBA.
It's incredible. It is one of the most like baffling plot decisions ever. Eddie cannot turn into the full Venom suit, or else it will track the xenophage that's tracking them. But by God, they have to have a dance sequence.
Yeah, and he turns into Venom.
He turns into Venom, and what happens is exactly what you think will happen.
There are so many baffling decisions in this movie. Early in the movie, they set up an entirely different plot. They're like, we're wanted fugitives, so we're going to go on the run. And then Eddie's like, let's go on the run to New York City, which has to be one of the worst places to go if you're a wanted fugitive. Yeah. But then he says, I know a judge there. I have blackmail on him. We can go there and clear my name.
Which is something they hint at in the first movie, that he's in San Francisco because he can't be in New York anymore.
Yeah, but who is this judge? Like, why is that a plot point that they keep bringing up and then it doesn't happen?
Yeah, it's dropped immediately.
What does that mean? They set up a more interesting sounding story and then they don't do it. It's crazy. I feel like that was like a draft from like 2020. They were like, let's have him go to New York and finally confront that judge we alluded to. And then they don't, but they left it in the script for some reason.
So what would be your ideal take on these movies? Do you think there's a way they could have fixed this?
Yeah, like I said, R-rated, grungy, them looking out while it's raining and Evanescence plays. I think that's the vibe I would go for, like edgy 2000s style.
Do we want Eddie and Venom to be like kind of buddies, or do we want them to be like reluctantly
I would say reluctantly needing each other to becoming like good friends. Like I think where they ended up by the end of the third movie is where they should have ended up. But they were kind of like that by the end of the first movie. And I think it would have been cool if they ended the first movie with like a really reluctant relationship where like, oh, neither of us can survive unless we stay bonded. So
yeah, because that's kind of the entire plot of the second movie is Venom and Eddie going through relationship drama basically with each other.
Yeah.
And then they break up and then they have to come back together at the end of the movie.
Yeah. It's an interesting take, and it's one that definitely works in this era where when you are targeting like fans that you want to become like diehard fans, you need to have like these shipping moments. And so the Eddie symbiote ship is very popular.
Yeah. I do not want to see the deviant art.
I think it's just called Sim Eddie or something.
More like Simp Eddie.
Simp Eddie. It's called Simbrock. And this person said Simbrock is so real that they had to put a ship edit in the movie. So a ship edit is like a 1 minute long fan cam type of video that's on TikTok and Twitter and stuff, where it's just showing two characters being in love with each other, played over some sappy music and with some filters on it. And that is exactly how they end this movie. They use the song Memory by Maroon 5 and just show a montage of clips from the Venom franchise, except 90% of them are just from the third movie. So they just show a montage of stuff that you just saw happen, played to one of the worst songs in existence. It's crazy.
And I love how the third movie makes you think that Venom is dead for some reason.
And we know he's not.
There's a 0% chance that they killed off that character. Just look at the box office. This movie's made about 200 million at the box office already in its first like couple weekends here.
This review for Venom Last Dance, and this is the fourth most popular review on Letterboxd. It says the fuck ass Maroon 5 montage was low key top 5 moments of the year. So people really like it.
That guy's gonna see more movies. Somebody hasn't seen Megalopolis.
But no, you're right. These movies make enough money. Tom Hardy clearly likes doing it enough. And Kelly Marcel, she got a whole career out of this.
Yeah, I was looking at her filmography. She's got time. She'll come back for another one.
They'll do more, for sure. And this is the only successful franchise out of Sony's Spider-Man universe.
Yeah, that's what's baffling, is that they're going to make like 10 movies in this quote-unquote cinematic universe, and all of them except for the Venom movies are going to fail, which is pretty funny. It's almost like the character that's actually popular with fans of this franchise is the one that people are going out to see.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who's another popular Spider-Man character that they could even possibly do.
Black Cat, probably. She hasn't really been in the movies yet. She showed up in Amazing Spider-Man 2, just her alter ego, Felicia Hardy. But, like, as Black Cat, that would be, like, a fairly popular character.
I mean, I would say that a lot of superheroes in general don't have secondary characters that can hold their own movie or hold their own movie trilogy. So
That's why there's never been a Robin movie.
So the fact that they were able to make anything out of these Venom movies is impressive.
It is impressive, yeah.
And I'll also say the CGI is pretty solid for the most part.
Yeah.
Especially since they're doing some like weird like body horror stuff with like the Venom head coming out of his body.
Yeah, sometimes like in the first two movies I thought Venom could have looked better. Like sometimes he was too shiny and he looked like a computer person. But like by the third one I thought he looked great. And all the other symbiotes looked really cool as well.
But yeah, Venom trilogy. Let's see if we can try to figure out like an objective rating for these. Like we were saying, the second one is the one that reviewed the best. So the Rotten Tomatoes are 30, 57, and 39, which would put the average at like 40, 45, something like that.
And then on Letterboxd, Venom: The Last Dance has a 2.6. Venom: Let There Be Carnage has a 2.5. And then Venom has a 2.9. So the first one's reviewed the highest on Letterboxd so far, and then the third one is slightly higher than the second one. What's the average of that? 2.5 plus 2.9 plus 2.6.
I mean, do we just want to do like a 2.5? Do a 5 out of 10 average score? How do you rank these movies? Do you say 3, 1, 2?
2.66. Yeah, which is how you do it too.
I would say so.
Yeah. Which is not the same as the movie critics. They have 2 at the highest, and then
that's kind of baffling. The second one's not good, and the second one's really short. Due, I think, in part of like they didn't really have a plot in mind.
No.
The movie does some like weird plotting stuff when in reality like they just want to get to the fight scene between Venom and Carnage.
Yeah, the second one's a mess.
And also Woody Harrelson's like a weird choice for the Cletus Cassidy character. I don't know if it works.
They should have gone with Jesse Eisenberg, because you got to imagine it's like the director of the first one's like, I'm gonna call up one of my buddies from the Zombieland franchise, and it's like, I'll get Woody Harrelson. We're tight. It's like, no, Jesse Eisenberg would be perfect for a serial killer type character. It would be like the end of Justice League where Lex Luthor is in the cell.
Lex Luthor.
Yeah, play his Lex Luthor. That'd be great. And then Woody Harrelson could be Lex Luthor because people might like that more too. Should have switched him around.
Okay. So let's do 5 out of 10, 2.5 out of 5. Okay, Jason, your job is to argue that the Venom trilogy of films is underrated. What is the pitch?
These are just like really lowly rated. And I think that compared to like the MCU movies, which I guess are just graded on a curve, these are not that bad. These are better than lots of MCU films. They're better than half the Thor movies. They're better than 2/3 of the Ant-Man movies. And then they like do something new. That buddy relationship between Venom and Eddie is something that we don't really see in any other superhero movies. In superhero movies, a character and their superpowers, they don't date. They're not in a relationship with each other. A person just has superpowers. This movie posits the question, what if you were in a relationship with your superpowers? What would that be like?
What if they were inside you?
Yeah, what if they were always inside you? And I think that's an interesting question, and it's cool to see. I think that Eddie Brock is a really likable protagonist. I do agree that he gets annoying when he's just doing his little bits with Venom. But he's shown to be like a super altruistic man before he gets his powers. All he wants to do is make the world a better place, and he does that through journalism at first. And we see him, he gets laid off, or he gets fired rather, and then he immediately gives $20 to a homeless person. He's always eager to help and protect people. And one thing that I think sets him apart from a lot of other superheroes is his desire to like change the status quo rather than uphold it, right? Like he's going up against a billionaire supervillain who, is doing bad things to the world, and he's protecting the little guy. I think that's great. So I think he's really likable. Even though his supporting cast is kind of thin, I think they're really likable as well. His ex and her new boyfriend. I just love the kind of subversion of the trope where like, oh, your ex gets a new boyfriend, he's gonna be a douche and you're gonna have to win her back. I like that they didn't go that route. They just made Dan this guy. He's He is a doctor, and
Pretty helpful.
Yeah,
movie.
he's really helpful in the second one too. He shows up after Anne gets kidnapped, and he pours fire on Carnage. So it shows that he is fairly competent and wants to do the right thing. So I like that. Mrs. Chen is a fine supporting character. I just think it's funny that they keep bringing her back. Yeah, these movies, it seems like the producers don't feel beholden to the way most movies want to have a good script. These guys were like, we don't need that. Just have fun. Go out there and have a good time, guys. And in a lot of ways, that paid off. These are silly movies. You kind of, after the first one, you know what you're going to get each time. And I think that they scale and ramp up in interesting ways. Even with Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, which I agree is the worst in the series, I think there are things that it does better. I think there are some really cool visuals with Carnage. There's cool visuals with him in the church. It's cool that he has this love story with another villain and that they're teaming up. There's just a lot of cool things that happen. Still not a great movie, but it's fine. It's worth watching if you like these superhero movies. But yeah, the main thing is just that core relationship between Eddie and Venom and how they play off of each other. And you can tell that Tom Hardy is having so much fun doing this, and I feel like that fun kind of exudes to the viewer. I know I had a good time watching these. I've seen them with different friends throughout the years, and we're always finding things to laugh at and cheer for. And that's all I expect from any superhero movie, and this one delivers. So, yeah.
All right. So my argument is that the films are overrated, and I think that the most like clear-cut example of these films being overrated is that they peaked with the very first movie of the entire franchise, the entire cinematic universe. The movie made $850 million off of like $120 million budget. Absurd numbers.
It's crazy.
And then the second one is a COVID movie, so we should keep that in mind. But that made $500 million.
That's still so much money.
Still a lot of money. I would say that the third one is tracking probably at around like 300 to 400 million or something like that. It's going down, and I think that's indicative of the first one sold tickets because people really like Venom. They're banking on the name, and what is in the movie itself is like kind of irrelevant. You just want to see a Venom movie. And then when they make the second movie, they go, oh shit, it's Venom fighting Carnage? I would love to see Venom fighting Carnage. And then what's actually in the movie is irrelevant. Yeah, you get your price of admission, right? Venom does fight Carnage in the movie.
Yeah.
And then in the third one, people go, oh, it's Venom again. But like, oh my God, there's all these symbiotes. And oh my God, it's Null. He's so fucking cool. He's so badass. He's in 2 scenes of the movie. The very beginning and the very end. That's not important. People pay money to see all the symbiotes. They don't care what's actually in the movie. So these are all the style over substance. It's very similar to the Transformers movies in that regard of these movies have the ability to be flashy and have like a lot going on screen, but ultimately they don't live up to what the legacy of this character is, which is one of the more iconic Spider-Man characters, one of the most iconic like anti-heroes in all of comics. And Venom is a character that I know a lot of people latch onto because he is kind of like primal and violent, and the symbiote really like sinks its teeth into its host. And these movies turn that whole concept into like a joke fest, and they make it really silly. And it's the complete antithesis of, I'm sure, why a lot of people are interested in Venom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they take this badass character and they turn him into he likes dancing, and he likes eating, he likes eating chocolate.
Yeah.
Is that a thing in the comics that the symbiotes like chocolate?
I don't know.
It's not important, but I think the critic scores reflect this. I think was it the cinema scores are all around like a B, something like that. So the cinema scores kind of lend credence to people think these movies are fine. They're not like amazing. If it wasn't for the box office returns from the first movie specifically, it's possible this franchise just would have like died immediately. This would have been like the Dark Universe.
I'm curious whether the third one will actually be profitable, because I think they need about 400 to 500 million to break even. Normally the rule is double your budget, but because of, all of these blockbusters have massive marketing, I read a number that said about 400 to 500 is what's needed.
And like Morbius definitely lost money, and Madam Web definitely lost money.
And Craven?
Craven's probably going to lose money, especially because for some fucking reason it's being released in December.
And it's going up against like Wicked.
So yeah, it's November and December. You guys will see when we're doing our November December episodes. Is loaded at the box office, and who's going to see Kraven the Hunter? Who cares?
I'm going to go see it.
Yeah, we're going to go see it because we're crazy.
Yeah.
And we have A-list.
Yeah.
So I'll watch anything.
Yeah.
But all this together, I would say that it leads me to say that these are overrated. Also, the critic score of almost fresh for the second movie is a fucking travesty. Like, how's that happen? What are those reviewers doing?
I know a lot of people go to bat for the second one. I've seen a lot of people say the second one's the worst one, and then someone will quote tweet that and be like, if you think the second one's the worst one, you're an idiot. And they'll ratio the first person. I hate that I talk like this. Like, I hate that I use this as a frame of reference. My brain is rotted.
Very online.
But yeah, the people go to bat for number 2, and I don't quite get it either. I think people like some of the visual stuff that Andy Serkis was able to bring to life. But that's it. Like, there's nothing much to it. The third one, I think, is a ton of fun. And I think it's genuinely like a good movie.
Yeah, I think if they did what they did in the third one and the first two, I think it would have worked better if they went with a more like grand scale type action movie vibe to it.
Yeah.
Then the first two are pretty self-contained, and it's not until the end of the second movie that things kind of go like really south for Eddie. If they were to like establish like the stakes and the scale of things from the very first film, I think that would be kind of cool. But they don't. I would say these movies are definitely overrated. I guess the more important question I would say, Jason, is do we recommend people watch these movies?
Yeah, I'd say see all 3.
See, I disagree. I don't think you need to watch these movies. I would say don't watch them.
I think you can skip number 2. I think you might be able to skip number 1.
I legitimately think these are not worth watching.
I think you get to see number 3 and have a good time.
Unless you're somebody that goes out of your way to like kind of watch bad movies and you have fun watching bad movies. These are going to frustrate you more than anything, especially if you're a fan of like the Venom comics or something like that. I can't imagine that people who are quote unquote fans of the comics are watching these films going, this is a strong representation of what this character is in the history of this character.
You know, I think people like these movies, and with good reason. I think it is fun to see Tom Hardy go off the leash for a little bit. He plays such stoic characters all the time, like Mad Max, even Bane. He's in like Peaky Blinders, right? I'm sure he's really stoic and badass in that.
Yeah, he is.
So he gets to just be a silly little guy in these movies.
Is it the first movie that he jumps in the lobster tank?
Yeah.
And just starts eating lobsters?
It's so stupid. These movies are so dumb. It really is like, I think, you know, with our criteria of what makes a so bad it's good movie, we talk about that a lot on here. I think these fit the bill. So I do think it's worth watching. Obviously, if you don't want to see a bad movie, like, don't pay to see it in theaters. But like, if this is on streaming somewhere and you're curious, I would say check it out.
Yeah, the first one's on Disney Plus, so you can check it out on Disney Plus and make up your own mind on whether or not you like the like the tone of these films, you like Tom Hardy's performance.
Would you see Venom 4 in theaters? If a fourth one got announced?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, with A-List, yeah.
Yeah, with A-List. Shout out to A-List. We love you, AMC. Sponsor the pod.
Sponsor the pod, please.
But before the AMC in Philadelphia gets torn down and replaced by a basketball stadium.
Yeah, we're going to stop shouting you out when that happens.
Got to be all about that Regal Life or United Artists or whatever other theater.
Yeah, we'll have to go down to Columbus and go to whatever that becomes.
Yeah, RIP. Anyway, any final thoughts on Venom?
Venom.
And with that, it's going to do it for this episode of the Overrunner Movies podcast. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Pods, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Hit us up on Discord, join our server. We have a letterbox spot in there where you can see exactly what we're watching in theaters right now, so you can get a jump on what's coming in future episodes. Join our Patreon. You can see updates on what we're recording, as well as get the episodes a day early. People that are on any payment tier of our Patreon, so that's, I think it's like $1 or $2 a month. You get the episodes early on Sundays instead of Mondays. Shoot us a couple bucks, get your name in the credits of the episode. Anyway, for myself, for Jason, that's going to do it for this episode of the Over Under Movies podcast. We'll see you at the movies.
Bye.